Welcome back to the India Show. Today we're joined by Raman Roy, the man often described as the father of India's BPO industry. Across 4 decades, he's helped turn India into the world's hub for high-value services, setting up the first offshore centers for American Express and GE, founding SpectraMind, which he later sold to Wipro, and then building Quattro, a company focused on deep domain expertise in finance and analytics. He's also chaired NASSCOM, co-founded the Indian Angel Network, and mentored generations of founders. In this episode, we talk about how India built its global services engine and what the next chapter of that story might look like. Thank you so much for joining us, Raman, today. It's such a pleasure to have you on our podcast. I'd love to jump
My
straight
pleasure
in.
and privilege. Thank you for having me.
I'd love to jump to our first question, which is that you were building India's BPO capability before anyone called it that. And for our audience, BPO, that's business process outsourcing. What convinced you in the beginning that this could become an important national industry in India?
I didn't have a clue. Nobody had a clue. And yeah, you're right. We coined the term business process outsourcing much after we started it. So let me tell you how we really started it. So I used to work for a company called American Express. And at that time, I'm talking of 35, 40 years ago. American Express did not have a card in India. The only credit card that was there in India at that time was Diners Club. And for a country of over a billion people, even at that time, it had a membership of 100,000 people. That's it. So Amex saw this as a great opportunity to say, let's launch the card in India. So did Visa, so did MasterCard, and everybody almost simultaneously started working on it. And then as we did the numbers, we realized that, every other country till that time that American Express had launched their card, they had sent in expat leadership that had launched the card before to come and do it so that they did it right. And we realized that given the size of the market, India could not afford expats. The P&L couldn't take the cost. So American Express decided that we'll do it with the local people and we will train them rather than send the expats. And I was asked to lead that exercise. So they trained me in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, Brighton in UK, US, all over the place over 12, 18 months to go and see that is how card was run and implemented back in India, which we did. And lo and behold, we launched the card. As a result, we became a card issuing country. Amex used to have a quarterly meeting of regional card issuing countries where all the operations heads used to come and visit and they used to talk about what was working and what was not working. So much as at that time, remember I'm talking of about 40 years ago, the total number of cards that we had issued was perhaps equivalent of what a Hong Kong or a Singapore did in a week. That was the total size. But I had the luxury of being invited to that meeting because we were a card issuing country and I was heading operations. And while people spoke about their successes, mostly they spoke about the problems that they were having, wanting to lean on others on how to get it better. And as I heard their problems, I'd get up and say, hey, hold on. I do that better in India. Wait, let me tell you how to do that. And it became, some senior, this was a quarterly kind of a meeting, once every 3 to 4 months. Very senior leadership from America used to come to that meeting. And in breaks, I used to head to them and say, hey, listen, give me a chance to do that. He's having a problem with chargebacks. He's having a problem with this. He's having a problem with this. Let me solve it. I know it better. I have better systems. I have better people. Became a stage where my senior said, oh God, there comes Raman again. He'll start talking of India. So they used to tell the other senior guys who used to hang around these very senior guys, keep Raman away. I don't want to hear him whining again. And then somebody came up with the bright idea to say, hey, listen, let's give him something that he can't solve.
Mm.
That way he'll shut up. Okay, so say 6 quarters, year and a half after we'd launched the card, this was the thing to say, let's find something to shut up Raman. And they identified Korean won bank reconciliation. That is a bank account that had not been reconciled for more than 5 years. They were round numbers, references were wrong, auditors were commenting on it. They had a big problem. They had used some of the big five and had not succeeded. And somebody whispered to those seniors to say, give him Korean won, he'll shut up. So Korean won bank reconciliation was given to me to say, hey pal, you think you're that good? Here is the problem statement. Here is the theme. For 5 years, we've not been able to reconcile. Let's see what you can do. 7 weeks. 7 weeks, what they had not done in 5 years, we were able to reconcile it out of India.
Wow.
So at the next meeting, where it was that people wanted to use that to shut me up, I got bragging rights to say, you guys couldn't do it for 5 years. I did it in 7 weeks. That is where people started taking what could be done out of India seriously. They sent a team to say, if he was able to do it in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, we couldn't do it in 5 years. Let's go figure out how he was able to do it. And that is where it came out to say, yes, systems, yes, procedures, yes, everything, but essentially the quality of the manpower. Educated, trainable resources who were willing to learn and implement what they learned at a price point that was 1/7 that of the US or the other markets. So, yes, nobody had heard of BPO. I was only trying to prove a point that we Indians could do something. And that experiment with Korean won led to American Express making an investment to set up their Asia Pac, Asia Pacific, Australia back office in India. And I got the good fortune to lead it. It is in that time that the term business process outsourcing was first used. It was almost a year after we started doing international work in India. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Amazing. What a story. That's really incredible. And this all led you to found SpectraMind. Now, I have a question about the acquisition of SpectraMind by Wipro in 2002. So that was really a landmark acquisition in India's BPO industry. And you actually stayed on as CEO of the Wipro SpectraMind and led that integration. What would you say was the toughest part of that transition from that company to then, the acquired company? Was it the negotiation? Was it the merged cultures? Was there anything particular that really sticks out from that time?
Let me just take 30 seconds to give your audience a little background. We had private equity investors. We, as a management team, did not want to sell the company at that point of time. Our investors, which was Chris Capital, had taken some bad bets and they had lost a lot of money. With what Wipro offered to them, just this single transaction could return their fund and make a return of whatever X over that fund. So I still remember that meeting with Ashish Dhawan, who was the partner in charge of Chris Capital at the Hyatt Hotel in Delhi. on a Sunday morning at one of the side tables. I always go and sit at the same table in that restaurant whenever I visit that restaurant. So on a Sunday morning, he called me and he said he'd gone and met Wipro, and they made an offer that was very difficult for them to refuse. I said, don't be silly. We are not going to sell right now. We'll get a multiple of that. He says, yes, we agree. But you know, Raman, I have to look after the interests of my investors. We've lost a lot of money in the other ones. Not only are we going to go ahead with it, we have a clause in our agreement that we can drag you along.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we are going to drag you along.
Wow.
I protested and I did whatever, and after that we had lawyers look at that clause, and it was pretty clear they could drag us along. And don't get me wrong, it's not that we were not going to make money. We were going to make money, but we thought we could do a lot better. We were top of the town to say we are one of the IPO ready companies. And in a year, 15 months later, we could have IPO'd and made serious things. So while at that time it was the largest deal that happened in services industry, you're right, but the IPO would have been, in our opinion, something else. But net, we were dragged along and we went in. Did we go in waving our arms and legs? No, we understood the clauses that we'd signed and we'd done whatever. Then Wipro decided to put in a clause in the agreement for acquisition to say Raman will stay on for 3 years for the transition. We looked at the clause and I said, whatever I do, this is one clause I'm not signing. I've been an employee. I know how our employees are treated. Before that, I'd worked with American Express, with GE, what is Genpact today. I'd set that up for GE, but again, as an employee, I said, I'm not signing this. So our investors got very pissed because here was a deal that was heading for closure, and I was going to disrupt it. And then Azim Premji, who was and is today even the chairman emeritus of Wipro, said, let's have lunch. So if you study history and you study Premji, a lot of his business is done over lunch. So I was asked to fly down to Bangalore for a lunch with Premji. And I went for that lunch, and Premji is, I've had the honor of working with him for those 3 years that I was there. He is fantastic. I've hardly seen him raise his voice. He talks in monotones. His thinking, you can never know which way it is going to go. So he sits there and says, oh, Raman, I believe you are not willing to sign this clause. Your business is so different to ours. This is the largest deal that has ever been done. Why would we ever pay the money if we cannot transition? Said, Mr. Premji, that time it was still Mr. Premji. After that, he became AHP to me. Said, Mr. Premji, I'm not signing. So he bent over and took out a thin folder. He said, Raman, I have researched on you. And he went on to tell me things that I could not believe, which he read out from that report. And then he said, you're a man of honor. I trust you. I will take off that clause from the agreement if you shake hands with me and tell me you'll stay for the transition, which will last about 3 years. I said, I'm willing to give you the word, but I'm not willing to sign a contract. This happened much before it was desert time. So over lunch, on a very short period, we reached there. Much before desert, he put out his hand and said, let's shake on that. And I said, let's shake on that. And he said, it's a deal. So that is how I became a part. Every position in the company had a shadow person from Wipro. So there was a game plan that was made that would allow the transition to happen to Wipro. So yes, there were some good things and some not so good things. The transition was seamless. 3 years later, the guy who was supposed to take over from me nudged me and said, Raman, do you realize 3 years are over? You said you'll go in 3 years. Said last month it was 13,000 people that we had on our rolls. The day it is 15,000, I'm leaving. He said, why 15,000? I said, I just have a number. The day my HR guy handed me the report saying our staff crossed 15,000, I quit. I dare say it was the aspect that Wipro looked for is cultural affinity. In any acquisition they've done since then, ours was one of the very first acquisitions that they did. But they tried to see whether the culture of the acquired company and their own culture, whether there were mismatches or it was the same. That was a big deal. I dare say Wipro never used to serve wine and whiskey. I came from a multinational background, and I could have a drink on my expense account. And I dare say I changed even that in Wipro. They started at least serving red wine and white wine. People don't. It's a big deal. We used to go for multiple meetings and conferences, and after that we'd head to the bar, have a few drinks, joke, everything. So here is a conference that we went to for Wipro. After that, we went and put our folders in the room, and we headed for the bar. There's nobody in the bar. They took the entire hotel, right? Yes, they did. But there is nobody in the bar. It was not their culture to sit and drink and make friends over a drink or anything. After that, we figured out the dinner was happening and we headed there. We didn't get a drink and we all looked at each other. This was early days of the acquisition. We looked at each other and said, bloody shit, Raman, you committed to stay 3 years.
Something's got to change.
But yeah, so is it a big deal? No, it is not that big a deal. But among my team, for the first few meetings, I take them out and buy them a drink because at corporate dues it wasn't service. And by the time we left, we changed that part of the culture of Wipro, and now they even serve whiskey.
I mean, that is such a story. I can only imagine also going through the whole acquisition, the pressure you personally, as being the founder of SpectraMind, must have been under. I'd be really interested in what led you after those 3 years, because very soon after you founded Quattro, and part of the idea was moving beyond cost arbitrage to really focusing on value arbitrage as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it was from that experience that then led you to decide, okay, it's time to found something new, and where you think we are at now in the industry, especially thinking about Gen AI and new trends in that direction? Do you think this is another big moment of change for the BPO industry?
Let's go backwards. Is there an
Sure.
opportunity right now? Yes, there is. Have we moved from cost arbitrage to beyond? For tens of years, all I was selling was cost arbitrage. On an average, we were one seventh of the price of the employees, but there was technology costs, etc. So we saved 60, 70. That was the early part of the offshoring, whether it was for American Express or for GE or early days of SpectraMind. It was all about cost arbitrage. But that is where you said, why did you get on to Quattro? So let me try and put that in perspective. When the 3 years were over, and some six of us who were there, we left within a week of each other. And I still remember that meeting we had in my drawing room to say, guys, is enough enough, and we go to the beach and enjoy whatever little money we made, or do we want to do? And the overwhelming thought in that meeting, and it was held only over coffee, nothing stronger than that. The overwhelming thought was we are too young to retire. I remember one guy saying, "Par, if I say it in Hindi, तुम करोगे क्या? What will you do if you don't go get up in the morning and go for a job? You're too young to do that. I'm too young to do that." And everybody and the crescendo build up in that thing to say we are too young to do that. And then we said, what we did for American Express, and there were some members of the team from Amex at that time, some members from GE, some members from SpectraMind, and so on. In Amex, we proved that offshoring could work. Where it started with the Korean won story, it went on to grow to over 1,000 people, multiple countries and things. In GE, what is Genpact today, we showed it was scalable. Multiple cities, multiple locations, multiple businesses. What we did with SpectraMind was to show that it was beyond being a captive. Because Amex was a captive, GE was a captive, they did only their own business. In SpectraMind, we said you could do third party business, and SpectraMind became Wipro BPO. And we showed third party. But all of them really had large customers. And when we said we are too young to retire, said what else? We don't want to do more of that. In each one of these things, we did something different, and that is where it came out to say, what if we take it to a different market? That is where we identified the small and medium business as a market. We also identified that acquisition and cleaning out was a way. Our model was very simple. Our model was never to do it as something that will stay. We were going to create something, create value, monetize, and get on with life. That was our model. So we saw the potential of acquiring something cheap, cleaning it out, setting it offshore, taking it separate. And that is how Quattro, and Quattro came from the Latin word fourth. That was our fourth adventure. Amex being first, GE being second, SpectraMind being third, and Quattro being fourth. And there was lots of learnings for us. In Amex, in GE, in Wipro, it was always the technology of the customer. We laid lines, we accessed their computers, we worked on their technology. The SME market had no technology that we could remotely access.
Right.
So we ended up creating our technology and offering packaged technology and service solutions. And that is where it is beyond arbitrage, because the value add and the value proposition that we started offering was of a totally different level, to tell the SME that what you can do at your own nickel is X. What you can do with us, because it is our technology far superior to what you have, and it is our people far cheaper than what you have put together, it creates a greater value proposition.
Yeah. That's really, I think, just shows that innovative mind. You've since also co-founded the Indian Angel Network, and so you get to meet lots of founders as well as being a serial founder yourself. Would you say there's any specific qualities in founders that will most reliably predict success, maybe specifically in the Indian context, or other qualities that you think are maybe a little bit overrated and aren't actually that important for success in founding?
So I think the quality of the founder is the single most important thing I look for. I have more than 180, 190 investments through the Indian Angel Network in 180 odd startups. I work with a large number of those startups, but my criteria is a very nebulous thing, because you'll ask me to explain it and then I'd struggle, is fire in the belly. You can't describe it, but when you meet a founder who has a fire in the belly, you get it, you can feel it. This guy's on the ball. At least I'm not looking for founders who understand what I'm saying or will listen to what I'm saying. I'm looking for a founder who has a fire in the belly to take on the world. You know, if I can be immodest, one thing I look for is 30 years ago, which way I looked at life. Does this guy or does this lady look at life like that?
That's
Because,
what I was going to ask
like one of
you.
my aunts said, I don't know if your audience will understand Punjabi. When I left GE and I set up SpectraMind, one of my aunts came and said, let me first state it in the local language, then I'll explain it to you. पुत्र की होया कट देता जो तू ऐ कर रहा है son what happened did they sack you and to save face you're saying you're setting up a company
Hmm.
that was there were no startups like there was no BPO
Yeah.
that time there were no startups there was nothing and I had the audacity to say that we'll be able to do it when SpectraMind was set up not a single customer. When I left Amex for GE, I committed to them that I will not hire a single guy from Amex into my new job. I did not.
Huh.
So, it is about saying that without that, I'll still be able to do it. Without hiring those people, I'll still be able to do it. I'll hire and train. There is no trained manpower. BPO did not exist as you started
Yeah.
this session, Lucas. It didn't exist, so I couldn't hire people who had done BPO. I had to hire people who had, general management knowledge and common sense and make something out of it. By and large, we were successful. We made our share of mistakes, but it is that audacity of saying that we'll be able to do it. So that is what I look for in founders. The founders will, after the meeting, other people would come back and say, "You're saying that's a good deal, Raman. There's no way this guy's going to succeed." Said, did you see that guy? Did you see his confidence? Did you see his comfort? Raman, drones cannot do that. Forget it. He will do something with it.
So a
And,
little bit
I'm
of
taking a
audacity.
specific example. That guy's done something with drones very different to what he's presented. But he made us a lot of money because of that fire in the belly. So there is, and it's very difficult to describe. It's not the same in everybody. But when you meet some people, it's there. Not everybody who has the fire succeeds. Some fail. There is a company I'd invested in that an external investor came in, put in a lot of money, took them into the wrong direction. The company collapsed. The founder got arrested because he owed money to people. When I met him, the only message I gave him was if ever you set up another company, I will invest. You are God's gift to mankind. You were wrongly guided, that is where your company went. But you know your marbles, you know your shit. So that is the joy. That is, yes, I co founded IAN. Was it known what it will become? No idea. There was no angel investing, there was no startup ecosystem, nothing. We, in India, we pioneered the angel investing, we pioneered the startup ecosystem. But as a result, today, at least 2, 3 days a week, I meet founders from various companies. I feel like I'm in my 30s again. Because these guys are so much joy. 2 hours before this call, I had a call with the founder. He had a particular problem. He's doing great work. He has what I call the fire in the belly and everything.
Hmm.
He had a particular problem, and somewhere I told him, listen, I gave him some input of what it can be. And at the end of it, some of the things he said were very complimentary. But net, it is so much joy. I told him also, I am enjoying this conversation with you. Because at least I'm able to give you my learnings and where you can take it rather than have to do it by myself.
I think you can feel the enthusiasm. I mean, I certainly can feel it, and I can feel that fire in the belly that you're describing. I think you put it very well because it's such an intangible quality that separates the founders that go on to truly great success, and how you you can just tell when someone is on a mission that they really care about. I think that comes through so clearly. I think what comes through really throughout the stories of each of the four businesses that you've been involved with is that you're very much a pioneer of a whole new industry in India. I have a background in history. I'm very interested in these pioneer figures throughout history that shape entire new ways of thinking about a problem. If you had to think of one figure from history that you think today would have been a founder of a great company, a unicorn founder, if you will, who do you think it would have been and why?
Well, if you ask me to pick one person, and if you take away the founder cap on it, there is a guy called Gandhi who founded a nation, all with a bamboo stick and his thinking. That is what true leadership is all about. There are people I know who run companies who don't have to do it, and that is what I said. I'm trying to emulate them when I meet the founders today, to give them guidance, to give them my input, and let them do it. Because it is, to me, leadership is that guidance of putting them on path where they accomplish more than what they could have accomplished by themselves. And that is what the fun is. So a lot of people could have set up and would set up companies. There are companies that I thought would never succeed and have succeeded. And there are companies I thought were a sure shot success and they went nowhere. So the marketplace is brutal. The marketplace ultimately decides, but the founders, the entrepreneurs, are the people who don't give up. Entrepreneurship to me is not about starting the company. Entrepreneurship to me is about taking the idea to the next level. You can do it as an employee, you can do it as a founder, you can do it at home, you can do it with your neighbors, you can do it anywhere.
I think that is the perfect way to end. I think a lot of people listening to this will, especially I think as a founder, you can have some lapses in motivation, and there are obviously off days and on days. And I think listening to this podcast will remind a lot of people why they're in it in the first place. So thank you so much, Raman. It's been such a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Lucas. Thank you so much.